There are people who believe they can manipulate the world until the world decides to teach them a lesson. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and instantly command attention, and wondered whether that confidence was strength or armor? There are people who believe they can manipulate the world, that if they understand human desire well enough, they can steer it, shape it, profit from it, until the world decides to teach them a lesson. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is how she moved through life. She understood something early on. People don't fall for logic first. They fall for how you make them feel. And she was very good at making people feel seen, admired, chosen. She didn't grow up powerful. She didn't inherit wealth. But she learned to read expressions, to anticipate hesitation, to soften her tone at just the right moment. Charm became her currency. Confidence became her shield. When she met successful men, business owners, investors, men accustomed to control, she offered something they didn't expect: admiration without challenge. She listened. She affirmed. She mirrored their ambitions back to them, polished and amplified. At first, the promises were small: a promising venture, a limited opportunity, a story told with just enough detail to feel real, but not enough to invite scrutiny. She built trust slowly. Trust is never rushed. It is cultivated. And when they leaned in, she stepped forward. To her, it wasn't cruelty. It was strategy. She told herself she wasn't hurting anyone who couldn't afford it. She believed she was simply playing the same game everyone else played, only better. And that belief is where the story truly begins. Because pride rarely announces itself as arrogance. It disguises itself as competence, as intelligence, as I know what I'm doing. She felt invincible. Every successful persuasion reinforced the narrative in her mind. I am smarter than the system. I understand people better than they understand me. And for a while, that story held. But underneath the elegance and certainty, there was something quieter, a subtle tension, the need to maintain the image, the fear of being ordinary, the refusal to be vulnerable. What happens when confidence becomes a mask you can no longer remove? What happens when control becomes an addiction? This is not just a story about a woman who miscalculated. It is a story about how pride can slowly separate us from reality until reality insists on being heard. And the moment it does, everything changes. The sums began to grow. At first, it was manageable amounts small enough to dismiss as minor risks, numbers that felt almost abstract. But over time, the figures became heavier. Larger transfers, bigger promises, more complex explanations. Each step forward required a more intricate web behind it. And here is where psychology becomes more interesting than plot, because escalation is rarely about money. It's about identity. Once she saw herself as someone who could outthink the room, stopping would have meant questioning that identity. And questioning identity feels far more threatening than taking another risk. So instead of slowing down, she doubled down. The stories became more polished, the timelines tighter. She kept mental notes of who believed what, who needed reassurance, who responded best to praise. She wasn't chaotic. She was methodical. But methodical does not mean stable. What once felt like effortless charm began to feel like performance, and performance, over time, is exhausting. Yet pride has a quiet voice. It whispers, "You've come this far. Don't retreat now." The list of men who trusted her grew longer, and with each success, the internal narrative strengthened. I am untouchable. Until one day, she met someone who did not respond the way she expected. He was younger than most of the others, calm, observant, from a family known for influence in business circles. She approached him the same way she had approached the others' measured warmth, subtle admiration, carefully introduced opportunity. But when inconsistencies surfaced, he didn't react emotionally. He didn't argue. He didn't accuse. He became quiet. And silence, when you are used to controlling the room, is deeply unsettling. He asked for documentation, clarifications, time to review details. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic, just patience. She interpreted his calm as naivety. What she didn't realize was that he was gathering information, cross-checking timelines, consulting professionals quietly, not to retaliate, but to understand. When he confirmed the discrepancies, he made a choice that changed everything. He did not confront her in anger. He did not threaten her reputation. Instead, he chose structure over emotion. He documented everything: conversations, transfers, agreements. He involved legal counsel. And eventually, the situation moved beyond private conversations and into formal channels. For the first time, she was no longer managing perceptions. She was facing records. No more curated dinners. No more persuasive smiles. Only written statements and verified figures. And something inside her shifted, not yet remorse, not yet acceptance, but the first crack in certainty. For the first time in years, she wasn't guiding the narrative. She sat composed, but her silence was no longer strategic. It was necessary. Documents were laid out with calm precision, dates, transfers, correspondence. No drama. Just facts. He didn't look angry, only disappointed. Trust, once broken, doesn't explode, it withdraws. When the verdict came repayment and community service, it wasn't destruction. It was interruption. Enough to crack the illusion of control. On her first morning of service, there was no audience, no charm to lean on. Just simple work and the unfamiliar feeling of invisibility. She began to see it clearly. It was never about money or power. It was about needing superiority to feel secure. Pride had been protection. Growth arrived quietly, not as humiliation, but as awareness. You cannot demand trust while breaking it. Eventually, reality corrects what ego defends. And when it does, we all face the same choice: protect the mask, or let the truth reshape us.